And let's jump to our showcase tonight. So, Jonty, I saw you on here. I believe you're on here. Introduce
Yep.
yourself and take it away. And, usually about, 15, 20 so minutes, walk through you want. You can make as interactive as you want, and it'll take 5 or 10 minutes of questions, and we'll leave 10 minutes at the end for that open mic.
Sure. Let me just adjust my chair here. So my background into AI is very nonlinear. My name is Jonty Amisha. I have a unique name. And the reason I have a unique name is I am a speaker of an endangered language. And I actually run a nonprofit organization that promotes and protects this language. It's called Circassian. And I was first interested in large language models many years ago because they're instrumental in creating language lessons, right? So I actually got into generative AI through my nonprofit organization, really trying to create lesson plans using English as a base language that would say, hey, if 50% of all the spoken words in most languages account or I'm sorry, if 50 words account for something like 50% of all the high frequency words in a language, give me 500 sentences that just use these 50 words over and over and over again, right? That's kind of how I started with generative AI with large language models. Fast forward several years. Last year, I started in a private equity fund running our Center of Excellence, supporting our various portfolio companies. And that's when I really started to lean on and leverage generative AI, predominantly almost exclusively ChatGPT 4. And I'm here to share my story today. So I have a couple of slides that I'm going to pull together, and I'm also going to make this an interactive discussion. But let's dive into it. Can everybody see my slides here? Yeah? Okay. So the context is late last year, Long Arc Capital, private equity fund based in New York City, created a marketing center of excellence because the vast majority of the investments that we make are into technology-related companies where it's not uncommon for them to spend 10 or even 15% of top-line revenue on marketing. So if you're going to make that investment in marketing, you want to make sure that you're getting a good return on your results. So I was hired in to deliver results yesterday. I started up as a one-man army. I now have a team of people behind me, but in the early days, it was just me. And so I leveraged ChatGPT 4 to improve my productivity when it came to content creation for marketing and sales, understanding that in our organizations, marketing is a demand creation function that creates leads for sales to then go prosecute. And so I'll talk about this in just a few moments, but that created a couple of very interesting dilemmas for us to bridge when it comes to marketing communications and consistency of marketing communications. We have been able to use generative AI to just dramatically, I'm talking, dramatically increase speed. When I talk about dramatically increase speed, I'm talking about going from a week to a few hours. And again, I'll give examples of that in just a minute. And one of the sort of tricks that I've learned, I don't know if they're unique to me. I'd be shocked if I'm the only person out there who's doing this, but I lean towards these two concepts of micro prompting and then iterative feedback loops. And again, I'll give examples of this in just a minute because I'm going to give a real world example. Few caveats. As a private equity fund, a lot of what we do is very, very proprietary and very, very sensitive. So this is a real life case study, but I'm not able to share the details of the specific company or the specific things that we did. So that's why I'm going to make this an interactive, real world example using a company anyone here can suggest if you're interested in. But I'll walk you through the exact same process I used, but not for any of our portfolio companies so that I don't, betray any of our confidences. So the basic example that I take is when I'm tasked with doing this, what I've discovered as a marketer is that to the extent that marketing communications are unified from a click to cash basis, you tend to have higher sales velocity, higher sales conversions, right? And so that means that from your Google paid ads, if that's a channel that you're using, to your landing page, to the copy that you put into your emails if and when somebody schedules a meeting with you, to the demo script that you're using to demonstrate your service offering or your product or your software, to all the downstream communications that you have post demo, as well as your proposal literature. All of that content needs to be unified on an end-to-end basis. And so for any of us here who are professional marketers, who are currently or have been in the past professional marketers, we all understand that little variances in marketing communications can create very, very large differences in conversion rates. This is why the field of conversion rate optimization, CRO, exists. And there's countless case studies that show changing a button from learn more to get started can have a pretty significant impact in the efficacy of a landing page in some cases. So when you take those impacts in efficacy and then you multiply them across every single stage of the funnel, and then you multiply them again against every single asset in that stage of the funnel, you can actually see very dramatic improvements in sales and marketing efficacy very quickly. So the approach that I've started to gravitate towards is, and I have no idea if this is a good or bad idea, it's just what I do. So no one laugh if I'm doing silly things here, but I'll open up ChatGPT and I'll say, tell me about X, where X is a company, one of my companies in our portfolio, or a competitor company that I think is doing some things very interestingly, right? And I might micro prompt further. Tell me about this product. Tell me about how they compete. Just, I want to give a frame of reference to the LLM because, you know, if I'm talking about United Airlines versus United Health Insurance, there can be some vagueness there. So I'm trying to limit the scope of the data set that I think the LLM is looking at. What I then do is I say, I am the CMO of this business, and I will give it a little bit of context around what that means. I've been tasked with creating new marketing literature, new sales literature, a presentation. I'll just give it a little bit of context. And then I'll start asking it some details that would give rise to the actual content that I want it to create. What makes this business different or better? What are the value propositions? What are the pain points that a customer experiences? What are the triggering events that makes a prospect enter the market at the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, right? I will ask these questions. And what I've often what I've found to be very helpful oftentimes is, and this is where the feedback loops come, sometimes I do such a good job bringing the LLM down to a level of specificity that I need to take the answer that they give me and then open up a new chat session because I almost feel that the LLM has gone so far down a rabbit hole that I cannot bring them back up one or two steps. So there's a couple of different applications of what I call these feedback loops. One is the use case that I just described, where I will drill down to get a very granular, non-fluffy description that I can then use for marketing communications, right? That's one use case. Another use case, and this is the example that I'd shared previously that got me to this presentation here today, is I will take existing assets or I will create assets at the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. And I'll go to the language model and I'll say, this is the content that I use to generate leads. This is the content I show leads once they have entered my funnel and I have a sales professional speaking to them. This is the content that I then use to put into a sales proposal to close that lead and make them a customer. And what I've just described is just very broad strokes of the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. Once I do all that, I will then go back, oftentimes using this concept of feedback loops, and I'll initiate a new chat session, and I'll say, here is what I have at the top of the funnel, here's what I have at the middle of the funnel, what areas of disconnect are there between the two that are not consistent, right? And I will iteratively refine my top, middle, and bottom of the funnel marketing assets. And again, I'm being illustrative here. There could be a multitude of assets where I'd use micro prompting and feedback loops to do this on an iterative basis. Once I've done all of that, and I feel like I have very solid top, middle, and bottom of funnel assets, that I've read, you know, personally, and I've edited myself, I'll then ask the language model, what are some objections that my ideal customer persona, and I'll give it some information about my ICP, what are some objections that a prospect may have across the entirety of the funnel. And it'll generate a list of objections. And again, I will then go through this process of micro prompting to drill down to a greater level of specificity and or feedback loops. And let's just say that I am then left with a series of a dozen or so objections. What I'll then do is go back and again, open up a new session. And for each one of my marketing assets, I'll ask the language model, here is, my top of funnel asset, my copy, whatever that is. Here are some common objections that a customer or a prospect might pose. Update this marketing literature, this marketing communications, so that rather than dealing with objection rebuttals at a different stage of the funnel, I actually engage in objection avoidance at the beginning of the funnel. And the example here would be, let's say I never talk about price, and at the end of the sales process, somebody says, I think you're very expensive, right? So what I will do is, understanding that if that is in fact an objection, I'll bring that all the way up to the top of the funnel, and I'll say, we are the best value for money, right? So using that sort of nomenclature conveys that we're not necessarily the cheapest deal in town. In fact, we may be pricey, but the value that you get is greater than the price that we charge. And that's just a very simple example. That may not be what the language model would tell me to do, and that may not be the right answer, but that's an example of where we take a downstream objection, we bring it back upstream, and then we build it in as a talking point rather than as something that gets left undiscussed and then haunts us later on in the sales funnel. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'm happy to give a live demo for anybody who has a business that they would like to apply this to.
Who's got some questions?
Can we apply it to the growth of this group?
Apply to,
That's a
you know
great
what? That would be a really cool. Let's do that, guys. Is that cool, Paul?
That's great. We need help. We
All
need
right.
somebody about us.
That's why we're here.
All right. So you guys are so new. I'm not sure if GPT is going to know about you, but let's just say I want to build and grow a Gen AI community. What are best examples you know of? So again, I'm trying to get it to narrow the field and go into a very narrow area of focus. Hugging face.
Can you blow up your screen a bit so we can
Yeah,
get a large
sure.
spot?
Of course. GitHub, Reddit. Okay.
What did you feed this with? What's it based on?
I just asked it. I said, I want to build and grow.
Is it just general?
This is just, yeah, there's nothing special here.
Okay.
It's just open field. Sharon, you have a question?
Sharon, we can't hear you.
I said, good to see you, Jonty.
Same here.
Should we start with a persona? Like, I am Paul Byer, and I am blah, 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 and I want to form a community. That's how I tend to work it, but I'm wondering if you introduce it later, if there's a better outcome.
Well, so I don't go there yet. So what I do is first I get it into this sort of framework, right? But then when I say I am the CMO, right, now I'll say, I am Paul Bayer, and I want to create an amazing community of AI, Gen AI enthusiasts I need to make sure my community, this is part of my little framework, is different and better than all the others. Now, I already know what question I'm going to ask next, which is, what are the top problems I can solve in the lives of my community members? Now, it's telling me how I can compete, how I can differentiate. That's useful for me to know. But what's more useful is just as a professional marketer is I always go into this idea of what makes me different and better? What problems do I solve? Then I sort of start to guide it into my ideal customer persona.
You should prompt with some limited resources and have it kind of work on more, maybe either effective, is it grassroots, is it, broadcasting? So maybe put some parameters around limited resources, because Paul's one guy and limited field.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I'll loop back and narrow it, because at this stage, I'll be honest with you, I almost don't, well, not almost, I don't even read what it's telling me. I just want it to start drilling down into this area where it's going to give me good insights.
Yeah.
So I'm now going to ask, what are the top problems it's going to solve? And I already know what my next prompt is going to be, because this is just how I operate at this point. What are the top 3 ideal customer personas I should target based on?
Jonty, there's also a request to share the link in the prompt at the
Yeah,
end.
happy to do so.
Great,
Happy.
thank you.
If I share it now, will it update? Like, will you guys be able to see everything?
That's actually a good question. Does anyone know the answer to that?
You're a team, right? You're part of a team. You won't be able to share that link. At least I can't.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure it updates.
Add
Okay,
team workspace.
so I'll
bottom
share it at
left.
the end.
Add teamwork at bottom left. What about
I,
that?
I believe it's a point in time snapshot, actually, where you share it.
But it says add team workspace. Is that what we're actually doing right now?
I don't think he's part of a team if you see that there.
So now it's getting me to where I really want it to be. It's generating for me an ideal customer persona, right? So we've got the aspiring AI developer, the hobbyist, the industry professional. I want to pause there. Paul, is this in the ballpark of the sort of people that you find gravitating towards your community?
It is, and I think the answer, yes, to answer your question, to answer Sharon's question, I think it's here, it's generating the personas based on the high level. And I think one thing that we're realizing here, this community here is really the Gen AI hyper enthusiasts. Some people call us the Gen AI addicts, using Rosemary's things, but people who really want to stay current and want to find other people to shorten that time to, that gap from time to understanding.
Okay.
I don't know if we get a lot of developers.
So we can refine that, but right now, my next thing is, and this is not part of my normal shtick, somebody suggested this and I think is a good one. With limited resources, what can I do to reach this community, engage them, get them to join in my community and stick with my community, right? So again, I'm just thinking as a marketer, this is really retention, acquisition and retention. So stick with the platforms, content marketing, partnership and collaboration, events, engagement loops. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to drill down into 2 more layers of depth. What I'm going to ask it is, give me a 30-second, this is something I often do. Give me a 30-second commercial that I could put on Spotify that I would use to target my personas to join my community. I just think it's a very powerful way to give me a very short form of content that talks about my value propositions and connects it to my ICPs. Whoops. Give me a 30-second commercial I can use to engage my ICPs and get them into the top of my funnel.
Yeah, see, this is great.
So we could go deeper, but this is just the method that I use. Again, we could go as far deep into the funnel as you wanted. What I would do, I'm not going to do it right now, just in the interest of time. And I will share this link to the chat here in just a moment. But what I often then will do is I'll say, give me the scope of content marketing. What are the top 3 webinars I would do? Top 3 white papers. give me the table of contents for each one, and then I'll ask it to generate content for each chapter of that table of contents. And that's another way that I'm able to get lots of high quality content. Like I've done this multiple times where it's generated the base copy of a white paper that was 15 or 20 pages long. And I think all of us know if you say go write a 20-page long paper, it's going to give you garbage after 3 pages. But by getting it to drill down to a level of detail where I'll say, give me the outline. Now give me the sub bullet. So it gives me like 5 chapters. Give me the sub bullet of chapter 1. Give me the sub bullets of set. And that's how I drill down to be able to get pretty high quality base content that I then hand off to a copywriter.
Jonty, this is great. Can you share a little bit as you're working with people, assume at the portfolio companies, what's the biggest challenge you're seeing with others understanding what you're doing? Are they blown away? Does it take them a while? Do you have a set training?
I do a lot of this just by doing working sessions, very similar to what I just dropped the thing into the chat, by the way, the link
Thank
into
you.
the chat. I do a lot of this in working sessions, and I think it kind of goes in 2 directions. Either people say, this is the best thing ever, I'm going to use it as much as I can. And sometimes they even overuse it. They don't do the micro prompting that I've tried to describe here today. Or they think it's the devil's work and they just run away from it scared.
That devil. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, Jonty, thanks for your sharing your insights. So I live in Silicon Valley. I am deeply familiar with the venture community. I've raised lots of rounds of financing, and I'm pretty familiar with the PE industry. Colleagues, all that kind of stuff gone through deals from beginning to end. So it's a 2-part question. Number one, did the PE firm that hire you, is it specifically to help out portfolio companies only, or are you also doing work for the PE firm? And kind of the second part that I want you to, if you don't mind addressing, is are the PE firms themselves using AI, whether it's for deal flow or deal analysis or understanding the portfolio companies from an operation standpoint? Because what you've been describing is a lot of content marketing that may have not be tightly related to the internals of a PE firm. So I'm just kind of wondering on the PE side, what they're doing.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak in generalities for very obvious reasons. I think from my vantage point, PE funds or any private investor class, whether it's venture capital, private equity, or anything in between, they're looking at generative AI, or they're looking at AI in general, but generative AI specifically, as both an existential threat and a massive opportunity at the same time. And I think that what I've heard people talk about is that the speed of change by which this technological innovation is likely to impact our businesses, whether for the positive or for the negative, is likely to be on a scale unknown of in human history. I mean, we've all seen those charts, like the first telegraph, the first radio, the first TV, then OpenAI. It just keeps getting faster and faster and faster. So, and I think that there's enough humility in the industry for people to appreciate that we don't yet know what we don't truly know. So there's at least 2, probably 3 major areas that I see or I've heard people talk about the adoption of AI tools. One is for general productivity improvements, right? And what I've shared here today certainly is largely around content development for the purposes of content marketing. But I've also shown, I think it's very easy to understand how literally a week of time could be compressed down to a day, right? That's a 5-to-1 improvement. The next area that I've heard people talk about is for pattern recognition, for lack of a better term. And that has applications for software development, for data insights, for data analysis, for trend analysis, things of that nature. And that probably has more to do with valuations and the nuts and bolts of financial dispositions, so on and so forth. And then the third area is the introduction of generative AI into the solution sets at the portfolio fund, at the portfolio company level, right? And that is independent of the first two use cases, which could also be done at the portfolio company level. But we're really talking about a feature inside of a product or a service offering that leverages AI as part of its value proposition. I think we're all kind of at the PE level, we're all chasing that dragon. At the VC level, I have a cousin who runs a venture capital fund in Silicon Valley. We talk all the time. I can't throw a rock without hitting 10 guys who all have just amazing, different, brilliant ideas. So my suspicion, I'm a sample size of one, I have a finite view of the world, right? It's just me. But my suspicion is that there's a tremendously greater pace of investment at the venture level relative to the PE level, just given the size and nature of, VC versus PE. Did I answer your question to your satisfaction?
I'm going to connect with you offline. The answer, the short answer is no, but I appreciate the comments.
Okay.
So,
Bob, I'm happy to. I just wanted to. We'll keep moving. I'll be happy to connect you guys offline.
Sure.
That's okay. Great. Go ahead, John, and the one move to open mic. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's interesting on the PE thing. I think to what we're seeing is across a bunch of different PE firms is really a bunch of areas. One is operating leverage. Like, okay, let me just, and Jonty, you showed a bunch of places where you can get operating leverage, right? And that's critical. Second is that they're worried about the risk. The existential risk thing is, look, if somebody else can come in with a better model, the price of exit, the price of their assets when they exit is going to be really discounted, right? That's going to be a real problem. So, they've got, a disruption risk while they're holding it. Well, the third, and a lot of it's labor, but you also see other kinds of productivity. The third area is that some of them that are more science-based, like one in particular, Paul and I know, has a material science company, and they're looking at the exploration of, new materials, just as drug companies are looking at, new drugs and new compounds. We've explored something like less than 1% of all the compounds that are relevant, for the human body, and they estimate that 10 to the power of 60, 10 to the 60th is the possible solution space. So if you can, and they've increased, the search space by literally 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude, and they're looking at that. So I think you see productivity, really risk on the sale part, and then, real innovation when you have the science-based firms that we're seeing across the board, really.
That's great. Thanks, John. Go ahead, Alden.
Hi. So I want to echo what Jonty said with the PEs, and we are having fantastic success with PE companies, and it's right on the money. The first part.
Alden, sorry to interrupt. Tell the rest of the group who you are and what you do. I think that'll help the context.
Yes. Introduction. I'm Alden de Rosario. I'm the CEO of CustomGPT.ai. It's a no-code, non-technical platform for custom GPTs, basically. So in this example, PE companies love us because they can deploy AI without any coders and developers. But the one that I wanted to mention here is the success we are having with the PE companies with respect to first, like clear use cases around operating costs and cutting costs. So support is the first one. It's like a no-brainer to get rolling. But the new one that is coming along is the more adventurous companies are now starting to learn that you can use these tools and AI to start driving revenue, because it's one of those rare things now where you can just tack on the AI product, just like Microsoft is doing, and increase the price of the product and increase revenues. So that's something new that we are seeing people adopting.
But it comes from increasing the value for real, not just slapping it on.
Absolutely.
Which
absolutely.
is the point.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But pretty easy to do. Nothing, no major like product development or stuff required.
Thanks, Alden. Yeah, Jonty, we'll wait for the next question. What's your view on some of the other tools, Jasper and some of the Midjourney and others out there?
I'm going to embarrass myself here. I know how to use
Here's a good one. Ethan should join. The AI is
I know how to use the tool that I use, and I just haven't had the bandwidth or the use case to go expand. I use Dolly quite a lot. That's kind of fun and interesting. We've had success doing that for marketing materials as well as infographics. But there's not a whole lot of other tools that I've spent enough time playing with.
What are you paying for?
Let's say if people can go on mute if you're not talking, it'd be great. Alden, I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Alden? Did you have a question?
Alden is actually feeling.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Are we getting Zoom bombed again?
No, Joe Falco is got some background noise.
Joe, mute, please mute. It's fantastic. So, any last questions?
What are you paying for, Jonty?
I've just got the $20 ChatGPT Pro 4 access plan.
The new ante for all business. Want to be part of the future? $20.
Yeah, low price.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
So thank you. And then also move the open mic. Open mic is where you can ask a question or share your view with some unbelievable product like Sora or whatnot. And we'll start with Mike Melville. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I need an excellent prompt engineer for this. What I do is I work for a staffing firm, and I use ChatGPT to write job requirements for me. And what I'll do is I take a job requirement that's written, then I talk with the manager about the job, asking questions. And you usually find out that once you ask them questions, do you need PLSQL? It says it in the job description. He'll say, no, you don't really, I like PLSQL, but you don't really need it. So don't worry about PLSQL. And it contradicts it basically in the job description and in what he said about the job. And what I do is I use this thing called Plot. Have you guys ever heard of it? It's an AI device that it takes down a total conversation, puts it into text, and summarizes it using ChatGPT. But I don't use a summary. I take all the text. I will prompt it by saying, you are an excellent HR administrator or executive. You write excellent job descriptions. You are going to take the notes that I've taken, which is everything that I said to the manager, and the job description, put them together and create a coherent, detailed job description that I can use to search for candidates, understand the job better, and help candidates understand the job better. What happens is it doesn't know what to do when it contradicts itself. So we'll say, required PLSQL. And I want to know how to make it so it doesn't, when it contradicts, it goes to the right one. Do you guys understand what I need?
I see Raymond's head going up and down. Raymond, do you understand or can you help?
Yeah, vaguely. I would say let's connect off of here because there's many reasons why that could be. It's dependent on your model, on who you're speaking with. Are you using GPT-4 or 3.5? There's ways to get around what you're looking for. There's also agentic processes that you could be using to do what you want to do. So I really feel it would be cheating to try to give you a direct answer right now.
How can I be in touch with you?
I'll connect you guys.
Yeah.
So thank you, Raymond. I'll get an email introduction to both you guys. And Raymond, you had your hand up. Once you go next, and then we'll go to Steve.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if anybody's checking out Olama yet. I'm working with a client. He's a chef. He wants to write some books. He really has some great ideas, and he wants to utilize he wants to utilize AI to help him out. So I'm helping him in phases. And the first phase was getting him to install Olama on his box and getting him to have a greater understanding on how the different models work, the open source versus proprietary. So he's got an account now on OpenAI, which he didn't have. And, I was showing him how to download Mistral and some other ones down to his laptop now. And, explaining to him exactly this, how to do the different prompts and how prompts will get you different results depending on the model, how to adjust those prompts, how to drill down on what you're looking for. We used an example. I said, ask ChatGPT on the origin of Manhattan clam chowder. And it came back with 5 paragraphs. And I said, we're used to just typing something in Google and getting a response right away. But we usually get, 1,000 pages and we never get any further than the first page, right? And we usually pick the links off the top. That's what we're used to. And I said, in this case with these language models, I said, you have to be specific on what you want. You are in charge. You have to shrink it down. You have to tell it, act as a world-renowned chef and tell me, someone who knows, the history of chowders, and then tell me in 3 sentences. Don't come back with, 6 paragraphs, And so I showed him how to do that and then compare it to the open source language models and the response that he was getting from those. And I told him, you need to play around with these different models and get a sense of, how they give you the content, of what you're looking for, your specific case. And so that's as far as we got with him today. But he was loving it. He was like, oh my God, I've got this on my laptop now. So I just wanted to see if anybody else is playing around with Ollama. It's really a wonderful experience. And it saves you money. And I don't work for them. It's open source.
I think not in this group. That's really surprising.
So, Paul, just to add, you should connect with Julio.
That's what I was actually looking to see if Julio was on here.
Yeah, no, he uses Ollama. Got a lot of experience in it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Julio Barros.
Well, Raymond, thanks for sharing, and we'll keep an eyes and ears open for that. You're on the cutting edge right now for this group for that. Let's go to Lucinda, and then Steve and Joe. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, I was just going to answer or give an answer to the question about merging the job description and the conversation. I mean, it might be good to just first of all, do it in a stepwise manner to what the speaker was saying is first of all, get it to summarize what were the things from the conversation. Then say, I have this job description. Please merge them, but make sure that whatever is in the conversation overrides the job description. And then say, show me a draft, and then you can maybe condense it or something. That might be one way to do it. Another way to do it may be to take the conversation and just ask it to generate the job description, from what its overall knowledge is. But yeah, it can be tricky to do that stuff, but sometimes breaking things down into a stepwise manner where you have it summarize something and then have it injected, or you say, please replace whatever is in the conversation to the specific items in there, otherwise leave it alone. So that's just one approach you may try.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lucinda. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, I got a 3 things for everybody today. One, I posted in the chat a link to a LinkedIn group of CMOs interested in AI. So if you're a marketing person and you want to get updated, Jonty, on the latest tools that marketing people are using, that particular group will have all of those links. The second topic is, with a partner, we're building an application coincidentally for PE firms, and we needed a product spec. So we used Perplexity, wrote out the what we wanted the product to do. We told it we were a product development director, and lo and behold, it came back with a 3-page product spec for a B2B SaaS application that we then sent off to our engineers in Eastern Europe. And then we got a feedback from them on how to develop the product. So it was interesting that non-product managers could develop a spec in a matter of minutes for this new product. So
Excuse me, in that particular use case, did you also put it into Claude 3 or ChatGPT and compare it, or you just went with Perplexity?
So I went with Perplexity. I asked my partner to dump it into ChatGPT 4 to see what it looks like and what the differences were. So I think he did that, but we haven't actually done the comparison. But you're right, that would be the good exercise to do. And then I guess my third question would be, there are a few folks on here from the San Francisco Bay Area. Do we all want to meet up at some point to have a beer? I think I got a yes from Carrie. But Bob, if you're in the South Bay, maybe we can meet down your way. So if
Jeremiah
offline.
right?
I'm out on the coast, so I'll come over and meet you there.
All righty. Sounds good.
Fantastic. We have Learning Lab East and Learning Lab West, and in Australia, we've got 2 or 3 down there, and I know 1 or 2 from Colombia. We just need a few Canadians. Thanks, Steve. Let's go to Joe A, and we'll wrap up.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for hosting the meeting. I have a quick question. I was wondering if any of you have any experience using Copilot, the paid version, and if so, do you think it's has more advantages over ChatGPT or Google Gemini?
Great question.
I've checked out a few of the different coding models. I think it depends on what you're using it for. Are you using it for what languages you're using it for, or what the purpose? What's the purpose?
Well, I'm using it for several purposes. One, to edit, proofread like content, and the other one is just to get general questions like ChatGPT. Because Copilot, they want you to pay like there's a $30 plan and it's per license. So if you have a family plan, say for the Microsoft Word, Excel, they want you to buy it individually. You can't have a family plan. So I thought, man, that's pretty expensive. So if you have 5 people in your family, that's like what, $150 versus the ChatGPT, so I was just wondering, before I invested that kind of money, I was just wondering if anybody had any experience, because the Copilot basic that I used, I thought was kind of like ChatGPT 3.5. And I know they use the ChatGPT, some of their, I don't know, I guess language models, but I wanted to see if anybody had that experience or not.
Joe, I think Adam may have some thoughts. Adam?
Yeah, hey Joe, great question. Nice to meet you. My company was one of the early access program partners that is using Copilot for M365, and I would not recommend it at this point. I try and use it in Excel, and it has very limited capabilities. I have much more success with GPT plus subscription and then working back and forth between Excel and the large language model. The Copilot that you get for free through the browser at copilot.microsoft.com does have GPT-4 and good reasoning. But if you're talking about paying for a subscription so you can use it in Word, you can use it in Excel, I just can't recommend it yet at this point.
All right. Yeah, that's what I gathered, but I wanted to get somebody else's opinion. Thank you so much.
That's great, Joe. That's what this group's for. A Hunter, take us home. Last question or comment.
Yeah, I was just responding to her question. If you're dealing with specifically AI when it comes to like Google Sheets or Excel sheets in general, I think it's still around. I think it might have merged with a different company, but it's called like Sheets.ai. They did a lot of good stuff in the space as far as like working with Microsoft Excel, and you'll be able to create formulas on the fly. I think it might have merged recently with a company called like Formulas HQ or something, but that's a good one to look at. And then if you're specifically looking for writing, I've seen throughout like my experimentation that like apps like, Hemingway are a little bit better than like, M365 Copilot, even just interacting with stuff. So.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. Another great call, another great meeting. Let's keep sharing and learning, and we'll talk to many of you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.